The presentation I will share and I will change. There some screen position is slightly different in the camera.
No
and
issues, no issues.
Then
Then Divakar can try sharing actually. Divakar, make it full screen and try to run a few slides so that you can see whether it is moving. Yeah.
Okay.
This is yours, no?
Yeah, this I will tell when continuously, and then our will present.
Can you just yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay. I was also just mentioning, not in details actually. See Divakar, today's that the paper itself is a bit deep and dull, and probably I think I mean there won't be much time, so try to keep it precise and
Yes,
that
sir.
just reminding only. I know you will be doing it,
No,
and nobody's
I
going
won't be
to
talking and
stop you. And are they keeping their time, Nimisha and Naurin? Did you just see whether they are limiting their time to 5 to 7 minutes?
like Naurin may take a little extra time, maybe around 15 minutes, 15 to 20. And Nimishas will get over in 10.
Okay.
So within half an hour, I think their total thing will be over. I will
I have
get
mentioned, I have mentioned, sir, I mean, Ramguti sir, and I have sent the slides also. So, and I have told them that, we are presenting this much only. So it will be,
Yes.
And when I sent that supplement to Geeta madam, she asked me, should I read all these? When I told her that, madam, since the supplement was there, I just forwarded only. We also do not know what exactly you said. Only you can tell us.
No, sir, that's what that present put it as very complex. So we are trying to show the most simplified part of it only. So most simplified version of it, and some only about my minor things about methodology and how to use the score in our setting. That's all is the focus for PG.
Divakar, can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We will plan like this. After the officials will give us the mic, we'll give 5 minutes to 7 minutes to the presenter and 7 to 10 minutes to the analyzer, and then we'll go to Ramguti sir. And then I think Pramila is there. We will ask her opinion and go to Padmanabhan sir, and then we'll come back to Divakar. And if somebody else is there, they can contribute, and we will discuss that, sir. In 40 to 1 hour is our plan, maximum. Say 1.5 minutes maximum. വേറെ എത്ര പേരുണ്ട് ഭായി ഇവിടെ PIC ചാർജ് കിംസിൽ?
KIMSL actually Dr. Shiju is there. I am there. Then two registrars, Mridul and Peter. Then we have two fellows. 1.5 years fellowship is running. Then senior consultants, Dr. Pramila ma'am, Neetu ma'am. They were initially fully taking care of PICU. Now they are more into emergency and general pediatrics also.
Good evening, Dr. Pramila madam. Madam ഉണ്ട് madam ഉണ്ട്. നീതു മാഡം നിയോനറ്റോളജിയിൽ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന നീതു മാഡം തന്നെ. മാഡം പീഡിയാട്രിക് ഇന്റൻസീവ് കെയർ ഉണ്ടോ?
അല്ലല്ല, നീതു മാഡം നിയോനറ്റോളജി അല്ല, ഇന്റൻസീവ് കെയർ.
മുമ്പേ ബെന്ന പറഞ്ഞ നീതു മാഡം ഈ മാഡം തന്നെ.
നീതു ഗുപ്ത മാഡം
ഒരു മാഡം ചോദിച്ചു എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞില്ലേ?
നീതു മാഡം, നീതു മാഡം, നീതു മാഡം, നീതു ഗുപ്ത. അത് ന്യൂനറ്റോളജി അല്ല, പീഡിയാട്രിക്സ് അല്ല മാഡം. രണ്ടുപേരും
എന്താണ് ഭായ് ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ ട്രെൻഡ്? ഐ മീൻ വൈറൽ ന്യൂമോണിയസ് ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ടോ ദിവാകർ?
Many viral pneumonias and mycoplasma is very common, sir. Many mycoplasmas are coming with lobar consolidation and pleural effusion. But here in Trivandrum, no one is getting very sick. and usually they are resistant to azithromycin. So we are when they are sick, I mean when they are coming with an effusion, we are starting doxycycline empirically itself, and usually the PCR turns positive. Then we'll come down on the ceftriaxone or whatever other antibiotics started.
I mean,
in North India, they are telling many are getting sick and all, but Trivandrum so far everybody responded well only. Like some
what
needed,
about this viral panels?
Yeah, in viral.
Are you doing viral panels?
Yes, we send that. We send the film array, respiratory film array that includes RSV, influenzas, and adenovirus. The paramix.
What is it called? Panel
ഇത് respiratory PCR, multiplex PCR from this BioFire. That's 6 hours. Turnover time is actually within 2 hours. So by the time it goes to lab and comes, we'll usually get the report in 6 hours.
Tamiflu positive Tamiflu.
If influenza positive na
Good evening, Kalpana madam.
Good evening. Good evening. Kalpana madam, good evening.
Good evening.
Anju, ഞാൻ ഇന്ന് സൈലന്റ് ആയിരിക്കും കേട്ടോ. എന്റെ തല മുഴുവൻ നെയ്പ്പമാണ്. Another 2 days only for me.
അതെ, നെയ്പ്പം തന്നെ ഇപ്പൊ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന നമ്മള്.
അല്ല, നമുക്ക് 283 വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ് എല്ലാം കൂടെ 283 ടോട്ടൽ 283 വന്നു. 186 കോൺഫറൻസ് നമുക്ക് 150 ആണ് ടാർഗറ്റ്. നല്ലതായിട്ട്. പക്ഷെ മാഡം നമുക്ക് ട്രിവാൻഡ്രം ആണ് കുറവ് മാഡം. ട്രിവാൻഡ്രം ഭയങ്കര കുറവാണ്.
ശരിക്കും ഞാന് കഴിഞ്ഞ ദിവസം തൃശ്ശൂർ പോയപ്പം എന്ത് അറ്റൻറ്റീവ് ആയിരുന്നെന്ന് അറിയാം. ഐ വാസ് സോ ഹാപ്പി ദാറ്റ്. അപ്പം അത് അങ്ങനെയാണ്. ട്രിവാൻഡ്രത്തെ ആർക്കും ഒന്നും വേണ്ട, അത് കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
പക്ഷെ കുഴപ്പമില്ല, വി ആർ വെരി ഹാപ്പി. എന്റെ ചെയർമാൻ 150 ആയപ്പോ പറഞ്ഞു 150 is enough പ്രമില എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. പക്ഷെ നമുക്കിപ്പോ 180 ആയി. വി ആർ താങ്ക്ഫുൾ. വി ഹാവ് 180.
നല്ലൊരു നമ്പറാണ് മാഡം. 180 എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇറ്റ്സ് എ വെരി ഗുഡ് നമ്പർ.
അല്ല, 180 ഫോർ എമർജൻസി മെഡിസിൻ മീറ്റിംഗ്.
പിന്നെ വാട്ട് യു ക്യാൻ ഡു, ബെനോ, ശ്രീജിത്ത് അഞ്ചു ആണോ സൗണ്ട്? അഞ്ചുന്റെ ആണോ സൗണ്ട്?
പെട്ടെന്ന് അഞ്ചു പറയാൻ കാര്യം
അല്ല, മറ്റേ അഞ്ചു ദീപക്. ശ്രീജിത്ത് ആൻഡ് ബെന്നോ, നിങ്ങക്ക് വേണേല് ഐ പെർമിറ്റ് യുവർ സ്റ്റാൻഡീസ് ടു ബി കെപ്റ്റ്. അപ്പൊ നേരത്തെ എന്നോട് പറഞ്ഞാല് കേരള പെഡിക്കോന്റെ സ്റ്റാൻഡീസ് വെക്കണമെങ്കിൽ കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് വെക്കാം. എനിക്ക് ചെയ്യാനൊന്നും സമയമില്ല, കാരണം എന്റെ വർക്കെല്ലാം ഞാൻ ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുക. എനിത്തിങ് യു നീഡ് ലൈക്ക് കേരള പെഡിക്കോന്റെ സ്റ്റാൻഡീസ് കൊണ്ട് വെക്കാം. ഓക്കെ, ഇതൊരു ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റി ആണ് ഫോർ യു, ബിക്കോസ് ഓൾറെഡി ഞങ്ങളുടെ നെയ്പ്പം 26ന്റെ ഏർലി ബേർഡ് സ്റ്റാൻഡീസ് വെച്ചിട്ട് വി ആർ കളക്ടിങ്, ഐ മീൻ വി ആർ അപ്രോച്ചിങ് പീപ്പിൾ ഫോർ നെയ്പ്പം 2026. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഇനി അവര് കേരള പെഡിക്കോൺ ഇതിന്റെ ഇടയ്ക്ക് വെക്കാൻ സമ്മതിക്കുമെന്ന് അറിയത്തില്ല. ഫ്രം ദ നാഷണൽ ലെവൽ
ഒരെണ്ണം അവിടെ സൈഡിൽ വെക്കാം, കുഴപ്പമില്ല.
അല്ല, അവിടെ
somebody should be there. ഒരു സ്റ്റാഫിന് ആരെങ്കിലും.
ലെറ്റ് മീ ടെൽ യു, അങ്ങനെയല്ല. അല്ലല്ല, ഏർലി ബേർഡിന് ഒരു ഇത് കൊടുത്താൽ, QR കോഡ് കൊടുത്താൽ മതി. അവിടെ വെച്ച് കളക്ഷൻ ഒന്നും ചെയ്യണ്ട, ജസ്റ്റ് ഒരു സ്റ്റാൻഡീസ് വെച്ചോ. ബിക്കോസ് there will be officials for the NAPM 2026 there, so they will be concentrating on that.
അല്ല, അതവരെ ചെയ്യട്ടെ, നമുക്ക് സൈഡ് വഴിയില്ല ചെറുതായിട്ട്.
അല്ല മാഡം, എനിക്ക് എല്ലാത്തിനും പെർമിഷൻ വേണമല്ലോ. ഇത് നാഷണൽ കോൺഫറൻസ് അല്ലേ?
അതെ, എന്നാലും പൊതുവെ നമ്മൾ ചെയ്യും. ഒരു
വാട്ട് യു ക്യാൻ ഡു, ഒരു സ്ലൈഡ് തന്നാൽ ഐ ക്യാൻ ഡിസ്പ്ലേ. ഇടയ്ക്ക് ഫ്രീ ടൈമിൽ സ്ലൈഡ്
കാണി. അല്ല, നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്, ഇഫ് സംബഡി ഈസ് ദേർ, നമ്മൾ എല്ലാരോടും പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് എങ്ങനെയെങ്കിലും യു ക്യാൻ യൂസ് ദാറ്റ്. അന്നൊരു സ്പെഷ്യൽ റേറ്റ് എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞ് വേണമെങ്കിൽ ഇച്ചിരി പൈസ കൊടുക്കാം. ചിലപ്പോ ആരെങ്കിലൊക്കെ കിട്ടും, ബിക്കോസ് പീപ്പിൾ ഫ്രം തമിഴ്നാട് വിൽ ബി കമ്മിങ്.
തമിഴ്നാട് ഒത്തിരി ഉണ്ട്. CMC വെല്ലൂർ തന്നെ ഒരു 20+ ഉണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ എനിക്ക് ഭയങ്കര സങ്കടം എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ IAP ട്രിവാൻഡ്രം എനിക്ക് എസ്പെഷ്യലി നമ്മുടെ മെഡിക്കൽ കോളേജസിൽ നിന്നുള്ള പീഡിയാട്രിക് ഭയങ്കര കുറവാണ്. PGസും. പിന്നെ ഞാനത് വിട്ടു. ഇറ്റ്സ് ഓക്കെ, ലീവ് ഇറ്റ്. ഐ എം ഹാപ്പി. ഐ ഗോട്ട് 283 ടോട്ടൽ വന്നു. വർക്ക്ഷോപ്പ് എല്ലാം കൂടെ 283 രജിസ്ട്രൻസ്, ആൻഡ് ഫോർ കോൺഫറൻസ് അലോൺ 180. സോ വി ആർ ഹാപ്പി.
ഇല്ല, വരുന്നവര് വരട്ടെ, നമുക്ക് കിട്ടാനുള്ളത് എവിടുന്നേലും കിട്ടും.
നോർത്ത് കേരള ഒക്കെ നല്ല രജിസ്ട്രേഷൻ ഉണ്ട്.
ഷോർട്ട് ചെറിയൊരു ഒരു 30 seconds ഉള്ള ഒരു മൂവി ഉണ്ടാക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ പിടിക്കൊണ്ട ഒരു സ്ലൈഡ് പോലെ അവര് ഇടയ്ക്കിടയ്ക്ക് ഇങ്ങനെ മാറ്റി മാറ്റി പല പല വീഡിയോസ് കാണിക്കുമല്ലോ. എന്റെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ വേണമെങ്കിൽ
പ്രവീൺ സാർ അടുത്തൊന്ന് ചോദിച്ചു നോക്കാം, അങ്ങനെ എന്തെങ്കിലും ചെറുതായിട്ട് പെട്ടെന്ന് നമുക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ
15 seconds
അല്ല ഉണ്ട് നമുക്കുണ്ടല്ലോ
അത്
സാർ.
പ്രീ ലഞ്ച്, അതിന് ടൈം ഉള്ളതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ വി ഹാവ് പ്രീ ലഞ്ച് ആൻഡ് പ്രീ ലഞ്ച് ഇല്ല, പ്രീ ലഞ്ച് ഇനോഗ്രേഷൻ കഴിഞ്ഞ് വി ആർ സ്റ്റോപ്പിംഗ്. പ്രീ ലഞ്ച് ഡേ 1 പ്രീ ലഞ്ച് ഇനോഗ്രേഷനാ. പോസ്റ്റ് ലഞ്ച് ബിഗിനിങ് വേണേ വെക്കാം, പിന്നെ ടുവേർഡ്സ് ദി എൻഡ് വേണേ വെക്കാം. അന്ന് പിന്നെ ക്വിസും ഗാല ഡിന്നറും വെക്കാം. ബെന്നോ ഉണ്ടല്ലോ അന്ന്, ബെന്നോ അന്ന് ഈവനിങ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ. ടൈം നല്ല പാക്ഡാ, കാരണം ക്വിസ് ഉണ്ട്, പേപ്പർ പോസ്റ്റർ, ക്വിസ്, ഷോർട്ട് ഫിലിം, അങ്ങനെ ആക്ച്വലി ടൈം പാക്ഡ് ആണ്. പിന്നെ
ഒരു സ്റ്റാൻഡി എന്തായാലും വെക്കൂ, ഒരു എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞൊരു വെക്കാം.
കേരള പെഡിക്കോണ്ട് വെച്ചു, കേരള പെഡിക്കോണ്ട് ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു സ്റ്റാൻഡി വെക്കാം, അതാണ് ഈസി ആയിട്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്. ഓക്കെ,
പിന്നെ ഏതെങ്കിലും വല്ല സ്റ്റാളില് നമുക്ക് അതിന്റെ ഒരു ഫെസിലിറ്റി വേണമെങ്കിൽ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. ഈ ഞങ്ങൾ പണ്ട് ന്യൂറോയിൽ ഇങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയാണ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു സ്റ്റാളില് നിങ്ങൾ ചെന്നാൽ ഇത് രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്യാനുള്ള ഫെസിലിറ്റി ഉണ്ടെന്ന് പതുക്കെ പറയും. അങ്ങനെ
ശ്രമിക്കണം നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട്.
ഞാൻ ശ്രമിക്കാം. എനിക്ക് വേണ്ടി നിങ്ങൾ കുറച്ചേ ശ്രമിച്ചുള്ളൂ, എന്നാലും ഞാൻ ശ്രമിക്കാം. എനിക്ക് വേണ്ടി വലിയ ശ്രമം ഇല്ലായിരുന്നു, ടു ബി ഫ്രാങ്ക്. IAP ട്രിവാൻഡ്രത്തുനിന്ന് എനിക്ക് കുറച്ച് ഹെൽപ്പേ ഉള്ളായിരുന്നു. പക്ഷേ വി മാനേജ്. ഞങ്ങൾ അല്ലാതെ പേഴ്സണൽ 1:1 കോളിലാണ് ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് കൂടുതൽ രജിസ്ട്രേഷൻ വന്നത്. അത് ബെന്നോയ്ക്ക് അറിയാം, എന്നൊക്കെ അറിയാം.
1:1 കോളിന് മാത്രമേ നമുക്ക് കിട്ടുള്ളൂ.
ഇത് ഫുൾ അങ്ങനെയാണ്.
ആരെങ്കിലും പേഴ്സണൽ ആയിട്ട് അറിയാമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ യു വിൽ ഗെറ്റ്.
നമ്മളെ ടാർഗറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് നമ്മുടെ ഓരോ ടീമിലും, അതായത് എനിക്ക് നല്ലൊരു ലാർജ് ടീമുണ്ട്. എമർജൻസി, പീഡിയാട്രിക് എമർജൻസി മെഡിസിൻ, അഡൾട്ട് എമർജൻസി മെഡിസിൻ, പീഡിയാട്രിക് ക്രിട്ടിക്കൽ കെയർ, ദെൻ ദിസ് വൺ ഫാമിലി മെഡിസിൻ. ഇത്രയും യങ്സ്റ്റേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. ആ ഒരു യങ്സ്റ്റേഴ്സ് എല്ലാവരും റിയലി വർക്ക്.
അങ്ങനെ അപ്പൊ നമ്മുടെ ഇത് വഴി, നമ്മുടെ പേഴ്സണൽ കോണ്ടാക്ട് വഴി, അവരുടെ കോണ്ടാക്ട് വഴി പോകുന്നതാണ് എപ്പോഴും രക്ഷ. somebody is actually trying not to register എന്നുള്ളവർ നമുക്ക് ഒരിക്കലും രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്യാൻ
പറ്റത്തില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ ഈ പ്രാവശ്യം ഐ വാസ് സോ ഹാപ്പി. ആദ്യം രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്ത ലളിത മാഡവും സന്തോഷ് സാറും ഒക്കെ, ഐ വാസ് റിയലി ഹാപ്പി. എന്റെ ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് എല്ലാം, സുൽഫി സർ, ഓൾ മൈ ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് വരെ അപ്രോച്ച്, അവരെല്ലാം രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്തു. സന്തോഷ് സാർ ആദ്യം രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്തു, റോയ് ശങ്കർ സാർ ആദ്യം രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്തു. ഐ വാസ് റിയലി ഹാപ്പി. എന്റെ ഒരു സെറ്റ് ഓഫ് ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് വെൻ ഐ കോൾഡ് ഇറ്റ് സെൽഫ് അവർ രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്തു.
Good evening, Krishnamurthy sir. Good evening, Anju Deepak.
നമുക്ക് 5 സ്ക്വയർ ആണ്.
അഞ്ചു ദീപക്കൊക്കെ ഇതുപോലെ വന്നല്ലോ എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അറിയാതെ വല്ലതും കയറി മാറി കയറിയതാണെന്ന് അറിയില്ല ഇവര്.
അതുകൊണ്ട് കയറിയതാ.
എന്താ?
I happen to be at home today, അതുകൊണ്ട് കയറിയതാ.
അഞ്ചു മാറി
അറിയാതെ കൈ തട്ടിയതാണ്, വാട്സാപ്പിൽ അറിയാതെ കൈ തട്ടിയതാണെന്ന് അറിയില്ല.
No, അറിഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ കയറിയതാ. ഇന്ന് I was happen to be at home.
Okay, madam. Thank you so much. So delighted. Good evening, Krishnamurthy sir.
Good evening. കേക്കാമോ?
കേക്കാം. പത്മനാഭ് സാർ കയറിയിട്ടുണ്ട്, പക്ഷേ സാറിന്റെ പേര് ഗുഡ് ഈവനിങ് സർ. ശ്രീജിത്ത് പത്മനാഭ് സാറിനെ വിളിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. സാർ കയറാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്. സാർ ട്രൈ ചെയ്തോണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. രാമകുട്ടി സാറിനെ വിളിച്ചോണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്, ഇപ്പൊ തുടങ്ങാമേ.
സമയമായല്ലോ. ജസ്റ്റ് വി ക്യാൻ വെയിറ്റ് ഫോർ എ ഫ്യൂ മിനിറ്റ്സ്. 5 മിനിറ്റ് വെയിറ്റ് ചെയ്യാം.
ശരി സർ. ശരി
തുടങ്ങാം.
പത്മനാഭ് സാർ അവരൊക്കെ കറക്റ്റ് ടൈമിന് കയറുന്നതാണ്.
ദിവാകർ, നമ്മുടെ പിള്ളേർ രണ്ടുപേരും കയറിയോ?
ഒഫീഷ്യലി താങ്ക്സ് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിലും തുടക്കത്തിൽ ഞാൻ താങ്ക്സ് പറയട്ടെ. പ്രേമള ഫസ്റ്റ് റെസ്പോണ്ട് ചെയ്തതിന്, ചെയ്യാന്ന് പറഞ്ഞതിന്, ദിവാകരനെ സജസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്തതിന്, പേപ്പർ തന്നതിന്, എല്ലാത്തിനും അങ്ങനെ പക്ഷെ അവസരം കിട്ടിയത് ഒരു കടുകട്ടി പേപ്പർ ആയിപ്പോയി. എന്നാലും ഞങ്ങൾ പിന്നെ ഒരു ചെറിയൊരു മോക്ക് പ്രസന്റേഷൻ ഞങ്ങൾ 2-3 ദിവസം മുമ്പ് ചെയ്തിരുന്നു അല്ലേ? എല്ലാം കൂടെ വെച്ചിട്ട് നമുക്കൊരു
when you present പക്ഷേ when you present actually they know that it should be, you should keep in mind it's all general pediatricians, so basically it is a methodology we are discussing.
അതാണ് methodology ആണ്.
We're not going to discuss the topic per se, Divagar. It is the methodology, the research methodology that is that.
Yes. Actually, with Anju sir, initially we were discussing many different studies. Then that time, okay, we can, sir also wanted we can try some. I mean, always some RCTR case cohort is being studied, so some guideline or something different we can try. So then this recent score had come, so we thought
that's very good.
Give it a try, but it was very complex. So we have tried to. I mean, even we didn't understand it fully. So whatever.
Try to analyze. That is,
it is variety is good.
Yeah, you have to definitely raise your standards. That is always good.
Yes.
Exactly, madam. That is why.
Multiple times you have to read
paper.
Yeah. You have to read the paper multiple times to really get it.
Kalpana madam, I think Shobha Umar madam and Shankar sir is also there.
Okay.
Meeting.
Okay, correct. 7:35 start ചെയ്യാം. 3 minute കൂടെ വെയിറ്റ് ചെയ്യാം.
Delegatesന് വേറെ ലിങ്ക് ആണ്. Delegates different link?
അല്ലല്ല.
No, same only.
Participants 20 ആയിട്ടുള്ളൂ.
ആയിട്ടുണ്ട് സാറേ, ഞങ്ങൾ കയറിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. ശരി, നമുക്ക് സാർ ഇപ്പൊ കയറും. പത്മനാഭ സാർ, സോറി സാർ, സാറിന്റെ പേര് ഡിസ്പ്ലേഡ് അല്ലേ? സാർ കയറിയിട്ടുണ്ട് സാർ. പത്മനാഭ സാർ ശ്രീജിത്ത് എല്ലാവരും ആയി കേട്ടോ, എല്ലാവരും. പത്മനാഭ സാർ, രാമകുട്ടി സാർ ഇപ്പൊ കയറും, കുഴപ്പമില്ല. ഗുഡ് ഈവനിങ് ശങ്കർ സാർ. ഗുഡ് ഈവനിങ് ശോഭകുമാർ മാഡം. രാമകുട്ടി സാർ കയറും. Shall we?
Now we'll start.
Okay. A very good evening to all. Respected teachers, colleagues, seniors, and friends. We have another episode of Journal Club today, and it is a very interesting topic, and as well as it is an interesting article also. So before the start of the session, I would like to invite Dr. Srijit Kumar KC, Secretary IAP Thiruvananthapuram, to deliver a few words. Over to Dr. Srijit.
Thank you, Anshu, for calling me and conducting this another episode of Journal Club. And today we are discussing a very important topic on sepsis, on sepsis. So we are looking forward this academic session very eagerly. So without losing much time, we can go to the presentation. So over to you, Anshu, for the next.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Dr. Patram, sir.
Start the presentation.
Okay. Dr. Premila, madam, anything before the presentation?
Yeah, let's start. And this is for me to introduce a dynamic youngster who will take Journal Club to a next level. My dear friend, Dr. Divagar Jose, for introducing to all of you. He is a pediatric intensivist who has joined us now. And many of you know him by now. He's a very humble, simple person, but a brain box. And he will really make, I'm sure from now on, he's, I think he will be like our junior Ramaguti sir, I suppose. He's too good. He's now training all our postgraduates very well. So Divagar, now on, you have to take Journal Club to a next level with all the new ideas and new things put in. So that's all, just introducing Divagar Jose. And this score he has selected because this is something which is a difficult criteria, but he will make it lighter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Prema, madam. So, as we know, the sepsis prevalence outcomes and therapy study, that is PROUD study, has conducted a study which has telling us that there is a prevalence rate of about 8.2% of sepsis, and the picture shows the types of sepsis and the most common parasitic pathogens. And there is something called as the Global Sepsis Alliance, which is having a global agenda for sepsis in 2030, which includes sepsis incident, the decrement of the sepsis incidents by 2030, and there are various steps in making that happen. And throughout from 2000 till 2004, there are many sepsis criteria which have been there, which has been made with various methodologies. And the definitions of these, like infection, sepsis, and severity, something show there is also minor differences in between. So this is the final sepsis score that we are having, and we have, this is just to mention, to make us understand the exhaustiveness of other sepsis scores. This is a podium, and we have this pediatric index of mortality scores, pediatric sequential organ failure assessment scores, etc. And we must be remembering the old PRISM 3 scores also. And various studies have shown that all these studies, all those criteria are having many they are not adequate in diagnosis or in predicting the mortality also. And that is why we have selected this journal, this article from the JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, which is an international peer-reviewed journal. And the details of the article will be analyzed and presented by the postgraduates. And we have Dr. V. Ramakutti sir as an expert, and as the expert in the expert analysis, and Dr. Patnanaban sir as the coordinator of the journal club. And today the presentation is done by Dr. Naureen PK, who is a junior resident from KIMSELF, and the analysis by Dr. Nimisha P. And we have Dr. Primila Joji madam, who is a medical superintendent and the senior consultant and pediatric emergency critical care, himself, and the vendor, Dr. Divakar Jose, associate consultant, pediatric critical care, himself. Over to Dr. Naureen for the presentation of the article.
I hope everyone can see the slides. Okay.
Yes, of course.
Yes. First, I'd like to thank the IAP Thiruvananthapuram team, Dr. Sridhar Kumar, Kalpana ma'am, and everyone and especially Anju sir for providing this opportunity. I should thank our, Dr. Pramila ma'am, our senior consultant and medical superintendent, who has given this nice opportunity for me and trusting with me this responsibility. So we'll go into the topic. So this article is mainly about the latest score to diagnose sepsis. So when we tell sepsis, especially when we ask with the juniors, there is always a confusion. What do we mean by the term sepsis? And the term has been evolving over years, like Anju sir has shown. So it is all infections are not sepsis. Sepsis is when we tell sepsis, we want to tell some serious infection. So the first pediatric sepsis, first and only available on so far was this IPSC criteria in 2005, which most of us will be familiar. That included an SARS response, which in the presence of infection, we used to call it as a sepsis. And when there is a significant organ dysfunction, it was called as severe sepsis. So the organ systems were CVS, RS, neurological, hematological, renal, and hepatic. So we were following this, but this was based on a slightly smaller group of population. This criteria were derived. And from the clinical point of view, there were few limitations because it required the presence of an SARS response for diagnosing sepsis. And SARS response, just a SARS response with a suspected infection may not mean the child is at risk of developing some severe outcome always. So the scores, sensitivity and specificity, both were not very great. It can include children with mild illness severity. And just using SARS criteria and diagnosing sepsis, it was unable to reliably identify children with infection at poor outcomes. And there were, many has reported discrepancies in clinical application. And most importantly for us, it was not validated in lower resource settings. And whether from a statistical point of view, it may not be the only right way to go. And so over the year, the idea of definition of sepsis also has significantly changed. So this is the 2016 adult sepsis definition. So now the emphasis is shifting more towards the host response. Maybe as much as the infection, or maybe more than that, the dysregulated host response to infection is very significant. And presence of a life-threatening organ dysfunction is also emphasized to tell sepsis. Among the children with infection, we want to identify some children who have progressed beyond a line where we are expecting a significant negative outcome. So we want to identify such high-risk children, and we want to target our interventions based on that. So the adult criteria, they had followed a scheme of identifying the infection and some change in organ system scores, like based on the SOFA score. So the pediatric community has tried to do a similar work on children based on the details available, which is the Phoenix sepsis score, which is the newer, latest definition for sepsis, pediatric sepsis, that has come out in the last year. So our PGs will now go through this exhaustive article. It is, there are a lot of details in this article, which we have also not understood completely. But since, we took it a trial, and Dr. Anju sir also was very enthusiastic about trying out prognostic score in our journal club. So we have given an attempt. Please, if there is some error, please correct us and let us learn together. Over to Naureen.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, please continue, Dr. Naureen. Please continue.
Good evening, my teachers and my colleagues. Myself, Dr. Naureen, DNB Pediatric Resident from KIMS Health, Trivandrum. Thank you, IAP Trivandrum, for giving this great opportunity for presenting this journal club. So, an overview, I'll be telling about the essential details from the article, a simple overview of the statistical methods that are used, and what does the score mean for the clinicians. So, the article we are discussing today is development and validation of Phoenix sepsis criteria for pediatric sepsis and septic shock, that was published on January 21, 2024 by the Society of Critical Care Medicine Pediatric Sepsis Definition Task Force, that was convened in 2019. So why Phoenix? This article was first presented in the Phoenix City, Arizona in USA by the Phoenix Pediatric Critical this, and this it symbolizes the mythological phoenix bird that represents the rebirth and overcoming the death. So the objectives were, the primary objectives is to derive and validate novel criteria for pediatric sepsis and septic shock across differently resource settings. So this is a study that used study for the development and validation of a prognostic score. So for the benefit of people who are not familiar with this methodology, I'll be explaining few terminologies that will be coming in, that will be used in the coming slides. So first, about the regression analysis. So it is the statistical technique used to analyze relationship between a dependent variable, that is target outcome, and independent variable, that are predictors, and develop the prediction models. For example, if you want to predict the risk of developing heart attack for a random individual in Kerala, first we will be collecting a sample of adult population data from Trivandrum, Kochi, Wayanad. Then the outcome will be the heart disease, and we'll be thinking and choosing as many as factors as possible for as predictors. Example: age, sex, smoking, hypertension, diabetes, duration of the comorbidities. And by this regression analysis, it gives a predictive equation that gives the appropriate weightage.
Please continue, Naureen. You can continue.
Appropriate weightage for the predictors in contributing to the outcome in the sample population. For example, for the risk of heart attack, 0.1 into age plus 2 into years of smoking. After that, we'll be generating a score based on the weightage of predictors in the regression analysis. So after generating the scores, we'll be doing validation, that is by internal and external validation. Internal validation will be done by the assessing models performance using the same data set, and external validation by performance on an independent data set. So the study designs were multi-center international retrospective cohort study, and with the study area of 10 health systems in US, Colombia, Bangladesh, China, and Kenya from the study period of 2010 to 2019, with a sample size of 30 lakhs in development set and 5 lakhs for the external validation set. With a steady population of all emergency inpatient PICU encounters of children less than 18 years, the inclusion criteria was children with suspected infection in first 24 hours. The suspected infection, which means receipt of systemic antimicrobials and microbial testing, microbiological testing within the first 24 hours of the encounter. And the exclusion criteria were newborns before discharge, that is the birth hospitalization, children with a post-conceptional age of less than 37 weeks, and patients who required operative care. Outcome measures that are used in the developing scores, the primary outcome was in-hospital mortality, and the secondary outcome were the composite of early death, that is within the 72 hours of presentation to the hospital, and requirement of extracorporeal membrane oxygenation support. So the methods and results. It was a retrospective cohort study that was performed using EHR, that is electronic health records data from 10 hospital-based sites in 5 countries. For the internal validation, they have used high resource sites 1 to 5 in US, low resource site in Bangladesh, site 1 in Bangladesh, low resource site 2 in Colombia. For the external validation, high resource site 6 in US, low resource site 3 in China, and low resource site 4 in Kenya. So this is the flowchart showing how it was done. Initially, 37 lakhs hospital encounters children who are less than 18 years were selected. From that, around 1,20,000 were removed during table harmony during the organization, and they were removed for having no observations. From that, they have selected 36 lakhs encounters, which were for the development set, it had 30 lakhs, and for the external validation set, it had 5 lakhs children. In the development set, 25% was 25% of this was reserved for the internal validation, and the remaining 75% of the children were used for the development of score. So in the development set, around 5.7% had suspected infection, and the external validation set, they had 7.9% of suspected infection, and in both they had around 1.2% of mortality. So the types of regressions are simple linear regression that contains single predictor and continuous outcome, simple logistic regression which contains single predictor and binary outcome, and multiple regression which contains multiple predictors. And when the relationship is non-linear, and the methods to reduce the overfitting, they have used ridge regression and lasso regression, which are used in the development of score. So the stacked regression or stacking, which combines multiple regression models to improve the predictive accuracy. Initially, they'll take the best performing criteria. From that, they will take the in this score they have taken the best performing organ system. It was second level model. From that, a final prediction was done by this stacked regression or stacking. So for this development of Phoenix sepsis score, they have used data IPSC, that is International Pediatric Sepsis Consensus, Pilot 2, Pediatric Logistic Organ Dysfunction version 2, Podium, Pediatric Organ Dysfunction Information Update Mandate, PSOFA, Pediatric Sequential Organ Failure Assessment, DIC, Disseminated Intravascular Coagulation, VIS, Vasoactive Inotrope Score, SI, Shock Index. As we can see in the table, these organ systems. So for the development of Phoenix sepsis score, initially we'll be setting a development data set from the study population, and we'll be identifying the best performing criteria for each individual organ dysfunction based on the subscores of the 8 pre-existing organ dysfunction criteria. From that, they have done this stacked regression models using a composite of the best performing individual organ dysfunction criteria. And the best performing stacked models were the 8-organ system bridge rejection model and a 4-organ system lasso model. The 4-organ model system was used based on the simplicity, and the Phoenix sepsis score was derived. And after that, the internal and external validation using this precision recall curves were done. This is the table showing how this best performing criteria was selected, and it was done by this, identified by this precision recall method. So this is the picture showing for this Phoenix sepsis score development, how this stacking was done. Initially, the best performing criteria from the pre-existing organ dysfunction scores was selected by regression method. Then the best performing organ system was selected, and which was then made to a sepsis model, and finally Phoenix sepsis score was made, and after that this internal and external validation was done. So during each step, pre-specified stratification and sensitivity analysis were performed to ensure the robustness. That were the higher resource versus lower resource settings, non prior comorbidities, age groups, ICU admissions, excluding the patients who required operative care. So this is the picture showing the Phoenix sepsis score, which included respiratory system, cardiovascular system, then coagulation, then neurological. In the respiratory system, it included this PF ratio and SF ratio. In the cardiovascular system, it included vasoactive medications, lactate, and mean arterial pressure. In the coagulation, it included platelet, INR, D-dimer, and the fibrinogen. And in the neurological, it included GCS score and pupillary reaction. So the Phoenix sepsis criteria, the sepsis which denotes the suspected infection, and Phoenix sepsis score more than or equal to 2 points. Septic shock means sepsis with more than or equal to 1 cardiovascular points. So validation is whether the model or the equation is predicting the outcome correctly. So in this Phoenix sepsis score, they have done by this PRC curve mainly. So I'll be telling about this PRC curve, ROC and PRC curve, what are they? So first about the ROC curve, that is receiver operating characteristic curve, which is by this, we have plotted false positive rate, that is 1 minus specificity in the x-axis, and true positive rate, that is sensitivity in the y-axis. And the area under the curve denotes the diagnostic accuracy of a test. And other than this, the precision recall curve, the recall means that was plotted in the x-axis means the sensitivity, and the precision means the positive predictive value. This positive predictive value is more important for clinician. So when the prevalence of this outcome is very low or rare, a PRC curve is better measure for this diagnostic accuracy. So these are the graphs showing PRC area under PRC curve, and I'll be telling about the area under the ROC curve for this high resource setting. So in this x-axis they have done this recall, and y-axis positive predictive value, that is precision. So in this blue lines which indicates composite lasso and composite ridge. So composite ridge, as I told earlier, it is a 8-organ system, and the composite lasso, which is a 4-organ system, and the green line which denotes the Phoenix sepsis score. So as we can see, this Phoenix sepsis score has more area under the curve, and which is more better. And this is the area under ROC curves. In this we can see the all three are on the same level. So for this diagnostic accuracy, a PRC curve is more better than this ROC curve. And these are the graphs showing for PRC and ROC curves for this higher resource site 6, and these are the graphs showing for lower resource site 1. So this is the figure showing comparison of this sensitivity and positive predictive value of this IPSC severity severe sepsis and this Phoenix sepsis. So we can see the Phoenix sepsis has more positive predictive value, which denotes it's more better than this IPSC severe sepsis score. So one thing that was observed was remote organ dysfunction. So the mortality was higher in children who had organ dysfunction in at least one of the four, that is respiratory, cardiovascular, coagulation, and or neurological organ system that was not the primary site of infection. So the children in this, the children with remote organ dysfunction represented 85.2% of children with sepsis in both higher and lower resource settings. So these children had higher mortality of 8% and 32.3% in higher and lower resource setting respectively. So these children with sepsis who are having remote organ dysfunction had higher mortality. The limitations of this Phoenix sepsis scores were that it was in retrospective data from the electronic health record. So it may have this missing data and data entry errors. And some of the signs of organ dysfunction used in the study might not have actually been caused by the organ failure. Instead, they could have been they could have been an after effect or side effect of the medical treatment or decision made by the doctors. For example, when we are looking for the GCS who are ventilated and sedated, it will be different. And when the patients in lower resource settings that were less likely to have available data on this lactate, GCS scale, pupillary reactivity, and coagulation studies, such as this D-dimer and fibrinogen. And few databases from lower resource settings were available. A form of data poverty was there, and the ones used may not be generalizable to every lower resource environment. The data from the higher resource setting were exclusively from the tertiary US pediatric centers. And the data set deaths from the sum of the sites included 10 years of data, possibly including the changes in practice during that time frame. So in conclusion, the novel Phoenix sepsis criteria, which were derived and validated using a large international database of pediatric hospital encounters in higher and lower resource setting, had improved the performance of diagnosis of pediatric sepsis and septic shock compared with the existing IPCC criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naureen. And over to Nimisha for the analysis. Dr. Nimisha. Yeah, Dr. Nimisha, can we continue?
Not visible. Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, you are
Yeah,
audible.
Nimisha, you are audible. I think
you look at the screen and you look at the screen and you can present. No?
Sir?
Yeah.
Yes. Dr.
Sir, am I
Divakar, can we
audible?
make the... Yeah. Can we make the PPT full screen, Dr. Divakar?
Can you see the PPT in full screen, sir?
Yeah. Now it is full screen.
Yeah.
Dr. Nimisha can continue.
Nimisha, you can continue.
Yes.
Nimisha,
It's
is there
okay.
any problem?
If the video is not visible, it is okay. It's okay. Fine. You can just
if there is some problem in the camera, no problem. We can hear you. You see the screen and you present.
Yeah. Don't worry, be calm. Let Nimisha take her time. Nimisha, let us know when we are good, okay?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Nimisha,
So,
we can hear you.
some network errors happened here, sir.
What?
Not bad, not bad. You can continue. We are good. We are good. You can continue, please.
You can
Hello,
continue.
sir.
You can
Hello,
see the
sir.
screen, no? Yeah, you
Yes, sir.
continue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. Good evening, all. I am Dr. Nimisha, Junior Resident, Pediatric IAP Thiruvananthapuram. And now I am going to critically analyze our article, Pediatric Development and Validation of Pediatric Phoenix Sepsis Criteria for Pediatric Sepsis and Septic Shock. Here we are using tripod checklist, transparent reporting of multivariable prediction model for individual prognosis or diagnosis. Here we are discussing under title and abstract, introduction, methods, results, and discussion and other information. So first, about the title, identify the study as developing and or validating a multivariable prediction model, the target population, and the outcome to be predicted. It is present here. It is both development and validation of the criteria Phoenix sepsis score among a pediatric age group for pediatric sepsis and septic shock. And next, about the abstract, providing a summary of objectives, study design, settings, participants, sample size, predictor, outcome, statistical analysis, results, and other conclusion. It is also very well explained in our study. About the introduction, background and objectives, explain the medical context, including whether diagnostic or prognostic, and rationale for developing or validating the multivariable prediction model, including references to existing models. It is also present and very well explained in our article. Specify the objectives, including whether study describes the development or validation of the model or both. It is also mentioned in our study. It is both development and validation of Phoenix sepsis score. For methods, source of data, describe the study or study design or source of data, that is randomized trial, cohort, or registry data, separately for development and validation data set if applicable. It is also mentioned in our study. It is a retrospective cohort study, and for both development and validation study, and specify the study dates, including start of accrual and end of accrual, and if applicable, end of the follow-up. Here in development and internal validation set, we are using 1 to 5 sites from high resource setting and 2 sites from low resource setting. And for external validation set, 1 site from high resource setting and 2 sites from low resource setting. And the study duration here mentioned as 2010 to 2019, and the exact date was not mentioned in our study. And about the participants, specify the key element of the study setting, example, primary care, secondary care, general population, including the number and location of centers. This is also mentioned separately in our study. And describe the eligibility criteria for the participant. It is also explained in our study and explained already by Dr. Naure. And give the details of treatment received, if relevant. Here it is absent here. The details such as specific antibiotic used and fluid management strategies are relevant, but including all such details in a large study like this would be impractical. And about the outcome, clearly define the outcome that is predicted by the prediction model, including how and when assessed. It is present here, and report any action to blind assessment of the outcome to be predicted. It is absent. And clearly define all predictors used in developing and or validating the multivariable prediction model, including how and when they are measured. It is present here, and report any actions to blind assessment of predictors for the outcome and the predictors. It is absent here. In our study, the outcome measured is mortality. So blinding cannot be done. For the sample size, explain how the study size was arrived at. It is absent here. In our study, we are using large number of population as our data, and in a study like this, with a large number of participants, the sample size calculation may be not needed. For the missing data, describe how missing data were handled. Example, complete case analysis, single imputation, multiple imputation, with the details of any imputation method. It is present here. The missing data were imputed using last observation carried forward approach across physiologically appropriate time windows. Here the last observed value is used in place of the missing data. And for the statistical method, describe how predictors were handled in the analysis. It is present here. Specify type of model or model building procedures, including any predictor selection and method for internal validation. It is also present here. For validation, describe how the predictors were calculated. It is also present here. And specify all measures used to assess model performance and if relevant to compare the multiple models. It is also present here. Here we are using positive predictive value and PRC curve for the comparing different models, which is already described by Dr. Naure. And describe any model updating, example calibration arising from the validation is done. It is not specified in our study. Risk groups, provide details on how risk groups were created, if done. Here, based on the organ dysfunction scoring, we can categorize as sepsis and septic shock group. No other risk groups, specific risk groups were identified in the study. And for development and validation, for validation, identify any differences from the development data in settings, eligibility criteria, outcome, and predictors. Here, there is no difference between the validation data set and the development data set in settings, eligibility criteria, and outcome and predictors. Both are same. For participants, describe the flow of participants through the study, including the number of participants with and without the outcome, and if applicable, a summary of the flow follow-up. A diagram may be helpful. It is also present in our study. It is well explained with the flow charts in the supplement. Describe the characteristics of participant, basic demographic, clinical features, available predictors, including the number of participants with missing data for the predictors and outcome. This is also present here. The demographic features are explained in detail, but the clinical features are not explained in our study. Maybe it may be impractical for this study, like with a large data set. For validation, show a comparison with the development data of the distribution of important variables, demographic, predictors, outcome. It is also present in our study. There are tables showing the cohort characteristics of development data set and external validation set in the supplement. And for the model development, specify the number of participants and outcome events in each analysis. It is present here. And if done, report the unadjusted association between each candidate, predictor, and outcome. It is absent here. For model specification, present the full prediction model to allow predictions for individuals. That is all regression coefficient and model intercept or baseline survival at a given time point. It is present here. And explain how to use the prediction model. It is also explained here in our study. Here we are developing a score, integer-based Finnish sepsis score for identifying for identifying sepsis and septic shock. For model performance, report performance measures with confidence intervals for the prediction model. It is also present in our study. It is given in the supplement. And model updating, if done, report the results from any model updating, that is model specification, model performance. It is not done here. Next, about the limitations. Discuss any limitations of the study, such as non-representative sample, few events predictors, events per predictor, missing data. It is very well explained in our study. And interpretation. For validation, discuss the results with the reference to performance in the development data and any other validation data. It is also present. And give an overall interpretation of the results, considering the objectives, limitations, results from the similar studies, and other relevant evidence is also very well explained in our study. And implications. Discuss the potential clinical use of the model and implications for the future research. And it is also present. In supplementary information, provide information about the availability of supplementary resources such as study protocols, web calculator, and data sets. It is present in our study. And funding, give the source of funding and the role of the funders for the present study. It is also explained. This is our tripod checklist for prediction model and prediction model development and validation. Here only most of the checklists were successfully met by our study, and a few things are not met. And what we should know as clinicians. The criteria, we know that criteria were derived and validated using a large international database of pediatric hospital encounters in higher and lower resource settings. And we also know that it has improved understood that it has improved the performance of the score for the diagnosis of pediatric sepsis and septic shock. Even though the study included a large population, its validation in a diverse country like India remains uncertain. And we should also know that the terminologies infection and sepsis are different. Sepsis means infection with life-threatening organ dysfunction. So in our Finnish sepsis score is not for a screening tool to diagnose infection. It is mainly a prognostic score to identify children with life-threatening organ dysfunction. The Finnish sepsis score is not intended for early screening or recognition of possible sepsis and management before organ dysfunction is over. This point we all should keep in mind. And screening is a key to reduce the mortality also. So we all should screen for the infection, and not here we are only prognosis. This is our Finnish sepsis score is a prognostic score. And organ dysfunction in remote organ with the will have a high risk of mortality. Dr. Naurin already discussed that. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Nimisha, for both of the postgraduates for the intense effort and the crisp presentation. Now we can stop the screen sharing, Dr. Divakar, and over to Dr. Ramkuti sir for his expert opinion. Dr. Ramkuti sir.
I'll stop it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, hello, sir. Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, this is a very interesting article from the methodological point of view. And actually, I don't have much to say because both Dr. Naureen and Dr. Namisha have discussed very well. They have covered almost everything to be said. But I will just mention a few points from a method perspective. Actually, what they probably did not mention and which should be mentioned, I think, is that this article, the methodology has gone beyond classical statistics. They actually used machine learning tools. And that is actually that is the trend nowadays. We have large data, they are going into this kind of approach. And what is the difference is mainly that there is a one term which probably you might have noticed. They have said they have used tenfold cross validation. And what is this tenfold cross validation? First of all, they divide the data set into a training set and a test set. So that's again an AI approach. In the classical statistics, we don't do that. So of course, we do that when we have enough data, but usually we don't have enough data. Here they have a lot of data, so they could do that. And then what they do is the training set itself, they've used a tenfold cross validation, which means that they divide the whole data, training data, into 90% on one side and 10% on the other side. So develop the model in the 90% and predict 10% will be used for prediction, and then that will be done again another 9 times. So which means each time the training set will be a fresh 10% of the, like they will go on randomly selecting from the same data, and then they will average over all the 10 validation sets. So that, and then that means you have a very good criteria or good model. So that is the kind of thing they have used. That is important to learn. And then another thing important I think I should mention is usually we go for methods like linear regression or logistic regression, which they could have done very well in this. That is a classical approach, but they have gone beyond that and used lasso and ridge regression and stack regression and all that, which are all machine learning methods. What is the importance or what is the difference of machine learning methods from classical logistic regression is that machine learning is totally focused on prediction. It is not at all, classically when we do logistic regression, of course one of the objectives is prediction, but another objective is also to kind of look at the model and see which are the variables which are important predictors. But in a lasso regression or ridge regression, they put all possible predictors and whether they are important or not, and then they try to develop a model. So the importance or the explanatory part of the model is not important to a machine learning model. In fact, that is one of the criteria or one of the criticisms against machine learning is that the explanatory power is very less. They're very good at prediction, but why it is predicting something is nothing, it's not very clear. So that goes here also. But here, of course, you just want to look at a prognostic score. So in that case, maybe it is not very important to understand what is happening. So in which case, this prediction model may be the best approach. So these are some of the things, all the other things they have. And another thing I want to mention just to clear confusion in some people's minds is that, again, when you use the machine learning approach, some of the terms which we are familiar with and which have where we use other terms in statistics. For instance, what they call recall is actually sensitivity. So you could have sensitivity, but in machine learning lingo, it is recall. Like precision is predictive positive value, which is what accuracy is accuracy. So it is like true positives and true negatives by total. So that is, they have not changed. So such kind of things are there. And also they talk about target, which is actually the outcome, and they call features, which is the predictors. Features, they are called features. This comes from a, basically most of the machine learning methods have been developed by engineers. So they have different sets of terminology, and medical people have a different set of terminology. So now I think there is a lot of confusion. So we have to learn both. So that is one of the problems. One other thing is actually what they have mentioned from a content point of view. I don't know, because this is a study, they have taken data for over 10 years And over the 10 years, I think probably the course of sepsis itself and the treatment must have changed a lot. So I don't know how that can be applied. And also, they have different populations, all mixed together. So with large numbers, some of these things may be ironed out. So that caution that Dr. Nisha said about whether we can apply this in India, I don't know. I think I also would tend to agree with her that maybe that is something we should seriously discuss. But in spite of all that, it's a very good effort, and the presentation also is a very well done. So I appreciate all that, and I congratulate both the organizers and the KIMS department and the people who present. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
I'll be able to answer. Yeah.
Sir, before coming back to you, sir, I would like to hear from Dr. Pramila, who is a medical superintendent and charge of the pediatric intensive care teams. And
So based on this previously it was basically the IPSC score. It was from 2005, and this is the 2019 score, that is the PSS. So various centers have started validating this. They are trying both the scores, and there's another study which is not published, but they will be published soon. That is done at one of the famous children's hospital. That's a Kanjikamodi Children's Hospital. They did in the ED. Many studies are there. Divagar will be a better person to tell about more other studies. Many centers are doing this validation studies. And one of the studies, they have shown that they have used the same as a predictor. So the area under curve for a PSS was almost 0.815. That is good predictability. So these two scores were used, and then the agreement between these two scores were found statistically significant. So basically, now they say that, ROC analysis, it's basically better to use PSS than the previous one. So I think now, but it is not actually that Divagar will throw light on that, which is the better score actually. Methodology and all what they have done, like sir said, the terminologies, we had to pick up. It's a good job done by Divagar because he has taught the PGs very well exactly what these things are. I was very proud to hear all the two presenting. Thanks to Divagar for that. And Divagar, just throw a light on that. I just want to know this because, the PSS seems a little bit better in predicting. So in the ICUs across as well as the EDs. So in the emergencies, most of the studies now PSS, there are studies coming up from the EDs. They're trying to put the score, both the scores, and trying to validating. So just throw light on
that. Thank you, ma'am. From application of the score, actually, as we saw in the methodology, this was like data was taken from the children in the first 24 hours. At whatever point there was infection was suspected, only at with the data from that first, the physiological variables in the first 24 hours were taken. So when we try to apply that also, we should keep that in mind. So none of the hospital-acquired infections they might not have been covered in this entire population. And the children who required surgery in the initial phase were excluded because the anesthesia and vasoactive medications can be used that can adjust this physiological variable. So they have excluded such children. And even in the Indian scenario, our tropical diseases, scrub typhus or dengue, such diseases may not be fully represented in this data. So when we are trying to apply that, we have to keep that in mind. But they have tried to make it more simple than how it was before. They have found that only these 4 organ systems, cardiovascular, respiratory, your neurological and coagulation. This 4 itself is able to tell whether the child is going for a high risk outcome or not. The previous scores included AKA and liver dysfunction also. The weightage of those organ systems have come down. We will have to see with our data also and see how it is really matching with our things. But it has become little more simpler. And like whatever Nimisha had said, whenever we are trying to from the practice point of view, the term sepsis is not just going to be equal to infection. We should know any child we are suspecting infection, we should start antibiotic, we should manage them. Using a sepsis score is mainly to identify the children who has crossed a line and where they are at a risk for developing a poor outcome, for whom the management should be targeted.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Divakar.
Thank you, Raman sir.
Dr. Padmanabhan sir.
Excellent explanation of the things that many things we have difficulty in understanding. Discussing with you have made it more clear also. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Before we come back, Dr. Padmanabhan sir. Padmanabhan sir. Sir, the mic is off, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this
yes,
is
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
of topic and analysis. I understood maybe 10 to 25% of what Ramanmurthy said. For the first time, I heard about machine modeling and everything. Only thing is, I'm a basic pediatrician. As far as I'm concerned, the sepsis is whenever you have clinical features of sepsis plus a bacteremia or a blood culture comes positive. That's when. And here we are using it to predict a log. That's what I understand. Mortality in the first 24 hours. Am I right? Am I right in what I think? I suspect sepsis, and from that here they say that only you can think of sepsis only if there is some other organ dysfunction like high liver, the renal function or coagulation profile or something. Then only you suspect it as sepsis.
No, sir. That's the point I was also trying to make. Like telling, when they develop these organ dysfunctions, the outcome is going to be bad. So now previously this in the IPCC, this will be like a severe sepsis. But now the current definition is when you tell sepsis, they mean it is severe. So the term sepsis and severe sepsis, two categories are now sepsis.
I have a child with high grade fever, looking little sick. I do a blood culture, is come positive. And in my teaching, it is sepsis. Now, whether it has a bad prognosis or a good prognosis might depend on so many other factors. If there is organ dysfunction, if the liver enzymes were elevated, if there was kidney failure, coagulation defects, we would naturally say that this is more serious a condition. And number two, you have said remote areas sepsis, isn't it? Remote area dysfunction is a bad prognosis. What does it mean there?
Like if the child is having pneumonia and that child is developing coagulopathy, our main organ involved is lungs. So that child is developing a organ dysfunction in another organ, which is not the primary organ where the infection is there.
Okay.
So so when they develop there are two children with the same score, but a child where the organ system involved is lung, but they are having coagulopathy also. And there is another organ system involved from the primary organ, the mortality rate exceeds higher.
That I understand. Okay. But that organ, kidney failure doesn't come in that, is it?
In the Phoenix sepsis score model, they have not taken that. Including an AK has not shown a significant. The 8 organ and the 4 organ comparison did not yield much. These 4 organs were able to directly predict the outcome well.
Okay. All right, probably because kidney failure you can treat nowadays. Some other thing you can't treat anything. Liver function dysfunction occurs very early. Some enzymes are always elevated in high fever. That's all I understand. Previously, we used to call it bacteremia when you have blood culture positive without clinical features, sepsis when you have clinical features, and pyemia when you have multiple organs involved with the pus in the infection somewhere is supposed to be.
Actually, it is some shift in terminologies only, sir. Previously, this was a severe sepsis. Now now it is now there is no sepsis, severe sepsis. It is they are trying to tell everything should be sepsis. That's it.
So there's nothing like severe sepsis, only sepsis. Okay.
Infection and sepsis. Infection and sepsis.
I'm learning from you. Anyways,
we are all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, we have Dr. Krishnamurthy sir with us. Sir is probably the most of the pediatricians may be knowing. Sir was a teaching faculty in Trivandrum and IAP, has completed MRC, PCH, FRC, PCH, and is actually a examiner of MRC, PCH, and now working at GG. Sir's resume is so exhaustive, so I'm not going into detail. Dr. Krishnamurthy sir.
I congratulate Anju for including Dr. Krishnan.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anju, for giving this introduction. I have been patiently listening to the presentation, and I'm really impressed by the presenters as well as the people guiding the presenters. As Dr. Padmanabhan has already mentioned, the issue here is the things that I think problems in this are, it has compared things across different settings, high resource as well as low resource, and the documentation, the the medications used to treat the sepsis, the type of cases that end up in sepsis all could be different, but they are using some common parameters like a cardiovascular dysfunction, use of inotropes, like that, several common factors to determine the predictors of mortality. Now, in a resource poor country like India, or in a moderate resource country like India, it is not a prediction of mortality because we are not following what is called as defensive medicine, which is being practiced in the US. We are wanting to look at what are the ways by which we can prevent sepsis, what are the ways by which. So our emphasis should be basically on early detection, or what are the factors that can help in prevention or in preventing progression to septic shock. That may be what would interest me more than the others that has been described. But certainly, as Dr. Padmanabhan said, it is a learning curve. It is machine learning that has caused all these things. And as it was mentioned earlier, there is no way that you can get an explanation as to why such a prediction was made in machine learning. We have to just accept it. That's all my comments on that. Thank you very much.
It is very important, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Kalpana, madam, want to add something?
Good evening. Actually, I thoroughly enjoyed the session, and I'm very happy to have Dr. Krishnamurthy sir also here. He was my teacher in my undergraduate days, and I remember his meticulous writings, especially with the purple colored pen. So he was so particular in each and every point, so we cannot miss anything. So he was his examination, his clinical finding, everything is like that. So actually, we are happy to have him back here. That is one thing. And regarding the study, this is very, very, very well presented and very well analyzed, and very nice points from Ramanguti sir also. Very well done. And one point I want to tell is regarding, because I am more in neurology, this neurological aspect of sepsis, like whenever a child is ill with fever and child is tired, no one will look at its mentation or the sensorium or other factors. And many a time, these neurological findings are not at all identified in pediatric not only critical care, wherever it is. The child, when it is sick, will be made to lie down in the bed along with the mother. So they may not identify what neurological problems the child is seeing. So this is one practical problem that I have seen everywhere where I have worked. So always see whether the child is able to listen something, at least. That sepsis, definitely some amount of alteration in sensorium can be there, but if the child is having some meaningful response to some of your questions, or make the child sit at least for a second, or make the child stand up, so that we will be able to identify what will be the neurological status of the child. That is very, very important. And regarding the prediction models and AI, I am very happy that this is being done, and this is definitely, this has made the research much more easier to the common people. That is what I feel. Thank you very much.
That is true, madam. Thank you, madam. Dr. Divakar, we have been discussing about this paper the last few days back. We were we were both in the same boat regarding many terms, and So Ramkuti sir is here. So do you want to ask any particular area? Like there were many things like this composite lasso, composite grids. Then as the presenter was telling, I mean, the analyzer was telling, but regarding the sample size and all. And also, there were many charts like that. So do you want to clarify or something, discuss any particular part regarding that actually? Because this lasso and reads, I was also wondering what it was, but Sarah rightly mentioned that it is a part of this machine learning. I mean, it's a it was just mentioned only in certain textbooks, like other types of regression are lasso and composite.
Yeah, and just to interfere there, this is new to us, but like Ramankoti sir said, this is more in the IT field and the engineers. For them, when they critically evaluate any of their
machine learning and
machine learning, it is they are very pro with that. But for us, it is first time. For me also, yesterday only I just read it repeatedly, and then I read about it. Then I asked my daughter. They know better than us. Like sir said, like Ramankoti sir rightly said, we doctors, some of the terms now. The machine, this is going to happen more. We have to know both the terms.
Yeah, definitely.
Sir beautifully explained which is which.
Yes, sir.
That is
Did you read the supplement, madam?
Prediction, everything came by that. So the engineers were telling that they know much better than the doctors.
Yes. And then now it is a fight between.
Made all sorts of weird ideas also along with that.
Yeah. I know madam's daughter is doing PhD, so she will be fighting with you. My daughter also. These engineers now, they think that all these terminologies, it is entirely different.
Madam, there is one sentence which is now something like people, AI will not replace doctors, but doctors who are using AI will replace doctors who are not using AI. That is what. So that is the only thing.
Yes.
I feel that there will be one time where AI will definitely replace, but we will be having job. But sir, anything to add?
I just put in one word here. Because this discussion, I mean, I don't know, because I mean, all these are very relevant. But what I find is, like you said, the engineers are jumping into data science and machine learning. But actually, if you look at the concept of data science and machine learning, there are three. It's a Venn diagram of three circles. One is statistics, the other is programming, the third is domain knowledge. Now, if you keep that out, you are not going to get anywhere. So most engineering students, what they think is that only with programming they can go far. I mean, I strongly doubt that. You must have a strong domain knowledge, but this is accepted in the West. Even 30, 40 years back when I was taught, I was surprised that, a guy called Larson taught me statistics, and he was dealing with, in those days, he had a lot of data on joint replacement. It was just starting in the US, hip replacement and all that. And somebody asked a doubt in the class, it's a medical doubt. And this statistician very beautifully explained how the procedure is done. So that is the level of domain knowledge that they acquire. Now, I don't see that happening for our engineers and statisticians, which is a tragedy. So that is why we are still kind of backward. So about this regression, ridge regression and all that, you might have noticed a term somebody has presented, and in that article also. See, if you use some set of data to make a prediction model, then there's a danger of something called overfitting. Overfitting means that it will perform very well in that data set, but it will perform very poorly in a new data set. So that is useless, because we are using prediction in a new data, isn't it? So that is why they have developed all these techniques to reduce the overfitting. They adjust coefficients using some statistical mathematical models which are too complex, and I don't even know. I know something about it, but not all. So two approaches, one is ridge regression, other is lasso regression. There are a lot of actually videos. If some people are interested, you can just check up what is lasso and what is ridge. So they try to scale down the coefficients to get the best combination. So that is all I can say.
Thank you, sir. Anyway, we'll have to learn more so that we can understand you more. That is the point, actually. Anyway,
no, that is another thing. Just one more thing I want to say is that this is why I always advise. Now a lot of medical students, people who come into medicine, have much better mathematical grounding than us people. I studied maths only up to 10th standard, so I don't even know what is calculus. I learned a little bit later, but the thing is, nowadays people are much better equipped, but they don't want and they are scared. But I think some of us, not all of us, but some people with a grounding in medicine should venture into these fields and become experts. I think that there is a lot of scope for such people. It's a very good career.
Yes, sir. I think the upcoming Pedicon is our secretary Srijit is there. We are having a session on probably AI also. I have asked him, sir, actually. Before we, Divakar actually was also having. Sir?
Can I just say something, Dr. Anju? We
Yes,
said
sir,
all
please.
about engineers, coming into the field of medicine and doing this analysis and all that, but we should always remember that clinical science documentation and data production is essentially, they are analyzing the data that we are producing. So there is certainly a role for doctors in this, without which, this cannot go forward. As Ramankutty sir had said, there are three circles in that, and one of the most important is data collection, and to identify the data, to identify the signs and symptoms that led to the problem is something that is really important.
That is true, sir. That exactly, because in the study itself, they have told that third world countries where the data collection was somewhat erratic and it's not good there actually. Yeah, I was also.
If I can
Yes,
add
sir.
something. I was just,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If I have a case of pneumonia and the patient progresses to low PO2 and high PCO2, we would be worried. We would ventilate him, and we know that he might come around once you give the antibiotic. Now, if this patient develops a high prothrombin time, starts bleeding, and has DIC, we know the prognosis is becoming bad. Is going on. Similarly, if the patient develops, distant like renal failure, even before these studies of lakhs of patients, we are quite aware of the fact that we didn't say specifically that a distant failure is a bad failure, but a multiple organ effect is a bad prognosis. There's no doubt about it. If they have a respiratory pneumonia and the patient goes into what you call pyopericardium, then again, that's going to be a little difficult for you to manage. Therefore, all this with only the statistical study and all this we learn is not very applicable. The bedside medicine goes in a different direction also. We all through our life, 40 years, we know which children is sick, which children is becoming more sick by not using these strict criteria, but bedside the things. But to say these things are not very predictive is not very correct. That's what I feel.
But sir, actually, when a less experienced person, when there is the scales, it is always useful. And when we directly go from the ICU and tell the patient regarding the prognosis, when the score level is relatively very high, we can tell that because of all these points, the child is not going to be in a better position compared to another child who is having a less score. So the scoring is always better in so many ways, because everyone may not be looking at all the points in the same way as the other person. So always some protocols, some scales, some criteria.
I agree with
always
that, but there are many things, as you properly said, correctly said. You have to, for example, the scoring system is fine. Suppose I find a child with pneumonia now, and next day morning I find the coagulation profile is within 3-4 hours the coagulation profile is deflated.
Yeah.
The speed at which it happens also comes to my mind. Oh, this child is deteriorating very rapidly. The prognosis is bad. Therefore, it's not essentially the scoring. It is so many things we take into fact.
Sir, this score exactly, all the data were from the first 24 hours. Sir. Their methodology is like that. I mean, we totally agree with you. Like this is just a score to like categorize, because now they are making this as the sepsis definition. So in the next 10 years, whatever studies whatever interventions they are going to do on sepsis will be based on this criteria. So it's just a sensitization of the terminology. Our clinical practice will be definitely different, and it is different. It is not for diagnosing sepsis and deciding intervention. It is just a prognostic.
My question is, Dr. Divakar, may I ask you a simple question? I have a pneumonia, okay?
Yes.
It turns out to be that the child has got he's already come in failure. There is multiple. I do a blood culture, and it turns out to be that it is sensitive to MRSA, sensitive to vancomycin. The prognosis is based. I have a medicine. I have the treatment for that. Yes. Now comes another child with pneumonia. and suppose he comes with a COVID positive, or he turns out to be a atypical pneumococcus, which is not sensitive to any of the vancomycin, the prognosis is totally different. We don't have a medicine it is not even an MRSA, it is not sensitive to vancomycin, it's not sensitive to gentamicin. Therefore, this is entirely dependent on your sensitivity report you get and the response you get to your antibiotic.
Yes.
I give vancomycin, I give whatever it is, his fever is spiking, he is increasing, definitely the prognosis is going to be bad, whatever be the score you give at that particular. You may have seen him on the third or fourth day. So I think so many things go into the clinical medicine bedside, and I fully agree with Dr. Kalpana that you have to do a neurological assessment, especially in patients who come in wheelchair to you. Please make him sit up and stand. We have had cases in which they came with abdominal pain, and abdominal pain was due to bladder distension and retention, and that was due to a neurological problem. He came in a wheelchair, and they put him in the bed. And it took nearly 12 hours before they realized that the patient had weakness. Therefore, these things happen to pediatricians. When Kalpana told me this happened within a week in our hospital. Therefore, these things are very important. Bedside prediction is good, but bedside medicine.
That is always happening, sir. Transverse myelitis, often the bladder will be palpated by me many a time, and then only the weakness will be identified.
Yeah, that happens. But medicine is very, very funny. Even after that, I am continuing to make mistakes. I am telling you, Kalpana, that just 1 week back, a child comes to you because he wants to go to karate. He has done extraordinary exercise. He's not able to walk, but he says he has pain all over the body. But when I looked at him, he didn't have tenderness of the muscle. Therefore, my diagnosis of myositis was not there. Why is he so weak? I thought. Then I told him, look, I want you admission. I want you to be observed. My father said, no. He only was doing some exercise which was not there. Next day, it turned out to be Gillenbarry. Transferred to Chitra Center. He ventilated immediately. Definitely, if you had examined, you would have picked it up, which I did not pick up probably. The reflexes was present. Therefore, this is clinical medicine. Prediction of outcome is always very, very difficult. At the initial stage, I always tell my students, if you are in a tertiary care, in ICU care, you are a better person because you have a ventilator, you are seeing after 1 or 2 days. First day, first hour, you see a patient, you are in for trouble. It can be anything after some time. Okay, doctor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Dr. Divakar, actually, during our discussion also, I was telling the same thing, whether this is because in the conclusion, they tell that in lower resource settings had improved performance for the diagnosis of pediatric sepsis and septic shock, and they were not mentioning about this prognostic, this thing at the conclusion, actually. So I was also, we were discussing that.
Lower resources better? What do you mean?
Sir, the conclusion is the novel Phoenix sepsis criteria, which were derived and validated using a large international database of pediatric hospital encounters in higher and lower resource settings, had improved performance for the diagnosis of pediatric sepsis and septic shock compared with the existing IPSCC criteria. There is a conclusion in the end they are giving in the study, in this article, sir. They are not mentioning in the conclusion regarding the prognostication. I was just mentioning only.
Like it is based on the outcome taken as mortality, and when you take the mortality and compare the IPSCC criteria, compared to that, the Phoenix sepsis score had a better performance. I think they are meaning that only. Like the positive predictive value was slightly better. Like we totally agree with Padmanabhan sir. Like our clinical judgment and our daily patient management is completely different. This is mainly research, and like further literature is going to be based on that. So when we tell the term sepsis, we should think of this definition, because this is what they are going to, the intervention is will be on this type of children. That's all.
In the internet, there are other articles also telling that it needs further validation, right?
Yes. Yeah, and
there are articles also. I may point out another implication is that suppose it becomes internationally accepted, then it kind of becomes mandatory, because something happens and ends up in a court of law, The lawyer will pick up all this and say, did you apply this? And then you can't say that, you know,
Yes,
I went by my clinical criteria.
That's a very big problem.
exactly, the medical legal aspect.
That's a very big problem. That is,
It's
the
a problem
guidelines
we
are
have to
good.
deal with.
Yeah, the guidelines are good. For lesser experienced people, as Doctor said, that it is very nice and everything. But sometimes we know that it is not the way we have followed it, because in the guidelines it's written like that. If something goes wrong, then the lawyer can just put it in front of you, and what does the judge say? Here is a national guideline, or is a pediatric guideline, and this fellow did not. He will just ask you, have you seen this? You can't say, I didn't see it.
You can say only yes or no.
Yes or no. And it becomes a problem.
And
So we have to follow the guidelines and tell what is the difference. Because of this difference, I have done this. So the clinical points will get more significance when we know the guidelines and we follow the guidelines and tell the difference. That should be the way.
Yeah.
With AI, the clinical examination and interpretation, you will be at a level at a higher level compared to the machine learning everything. So if you are good at clinical, that is also there. And
just say, Kalpana, or everyone, just one thing, that is, if you follow the guidelines and something wrong happens, you have something to back up.
Yes.
If we don't follow the guidelines and something wrong happens, there is nowhere to hide. That is the way medicine is moving.
Yes. Yes. Yes, definitely.
Dr. Divakar, regarding this PF ratio, lactate, D-dimer, fibrinogen in low resource settings, is it practically okay? I mean, what is your comment on that? That's one last question I wanted to ask.
Like PF ratio is quite difficult. Not every place will have a ABG, and D-dimer is still not commonly available anywhere. But what they have mentioned is the predictions were based on the places in the lower resist validation sites. It was based on the place where these data were not available also. And they have multiple options among these criteria. And the maximum scores, like in the the coagulation, 4 parameters are there, but the maximum score is 2. So even if there is some dysfunction, any two, at least the platelet and PTR abnormal, that is I mean, considered as the maximum score. So that effect is actually better. I mean, that's what that is mentioned in the article. Like, but in ours, the thing when with the COVID with a high D-dimer will react differently, and dengue with a high D-dimer will react differently. That individual differences will always be there, which is not accounted in the score.
It is almost 1.5 hours. Right? So if there is anything more to discuss, yes, please.
It's a very interesting discussion anyway.
Yes, sir.
So the guidelines are no longer guidelines; they are mandatory. for the junior people, at least, for when you are they're practicing in a periphery. That's what it is. Anyway.
Yes, sir. Dr. Premila has already gone. Then, I mean, I would, Dr. Divakar, thank you so much for the discussion. Probably we can wind up with the Computer Science and Advanced permission. Srijit is here, our secretary is here, Dr. Kalpana Madam is also there. I would like to thank Dr. Kalpana Madam, Dr. Srijit, Dr. Divakar sir, Ramguttu sir, Padma sir, Krishnamurthy sir, and the postgraduates, Dr. Naveen and Dr. Nimisha, for giving us an excellent session of Journal Club. Over to Dr. Srijit sir.
Thank you.
Nothing more to add. Anju done a wonderful job, and also thank the KIMS team for making this difficult journal. Yeah. And thank you, Divakar, and the PGs, and also thankful to Ramguttu sir, Krishnamurthy sir, and Padmanabhan sir for the valuable inputs and make this wonderful experience. Hope you to see in the next time, sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good night. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.